Welcome to the Empowering Industry Podcast, a production from Empowering Pumps and Equipment as the voice of the pump and related equipment industries. Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Empowering Industry Podcast. I'm your host, Charli Matthews. And I have Chad Pilbeam with me today. You've had him just a couple of weeks ago, not long ago, maybe a month, I don't know, on the podcast talking about Beer Logic and himself. And of course, I guess the best way to say this is I just love the energy. I wanted to talk to you about something maybe other than marketing, even though marketing is in pretty much every industry, everything we do. You got to be able to sell your ideas. So today we're going to talk about leadership. So Chad, just introduce yourself for the people who don't know you.
I can do that, but hold on. I just want to make an announcement. I found him. Look, Waldo. Hey, it wouldn't be right if we didn't start off by pouring ourselves a beer, because I know you're like, wait a minute. You're supposed to do the introduction and tell people about your pedigree and your background. I am the founder of Beer Logic Conferences and Events. I've been doing this now for over a decade. I lost track of the years. I think this is year 13, and it is everything I ever need to know. I learned from beer, and it is a business event, industry agnostic. Surprisingly, I do a lot of presentations on marketing and sales, but also talk about branding, leadership. I work with a lot of different companies in different industries, do trade shows, MC events, like the Epic event coming up in November in Atlanta. I'm going to be there again. That's going to be a good time. And I've got a background in industrial marketing, working for essentially Caterpillar and Mitsubishi, and worked in the oil and gas industry for a short while, and started my own business and have a beer radio show. What's on Tap Radio? Oh, hold on. Got to get the plug in here. Got to get your plugs in. What's on Tap Radio? What's on Tap Radio? Follow us Sundays, 3 to 5 Central Time on KPRC 950 AM and anywhere in the world on the iHeartRadio app. So that's my background. And you and I've been friends for, I don't know how many years.
A little over a decade.
Yeah, we've known each other for a little while. And I love it when you have a podcast and you say, hey, Chad, do you want to come on and talk about leadership, or you want to come on and talk about marketing, or whatever our topics we've bounced ideas around it. And every time I say yes. And the reason I say yes is because I know the content's going to be good, because you're going to carry this whole program. I'm just going to drink beer and sit back and see what you have to throw at us and your audience.
Well, let me surprise everybody. I have actually brought my little glass here. It looks like beer. It's a cider. It counts, but cheers to you, Chad.
Oh yeah, here. Yes, cheers. That's right. You got to go ahead and raise a glass. And I'm glad you did that too, because one of the things that I've learned about leadership, just diving right in here before we get to any of the questions and topics, I have seen many industry leaders who, number one, don't drink at all. They don't drink any alcohol at all. But they allow other people to drink in their presence without making them feel awkward. Yes. And make them feel guilty for it. And at the same time, I've seen other industry leaders who know that they recognize that somebody would like to have a beer with this conversation, because maybe it's a difficult topic, or maybe there's just, a little bit of nervousness, and just having a beer to take a little, hey, let's put our guard down. In fact, Steve Jobs of Apple used to, this official What's on Tap Radio fun fact right here for you. Steve Jobs used to have the beer test for his employees when he was hiring. This is a true story. He would ask himself this question: is this somebody who I would want to have a beer with? And if he thought, I don't think I'd want to sit down and have a beer with this guy. Like if I ordered a beer, I want to finish it as fast as possible and get on to the next candidate. That good chance you're not going to get hired. But occasionally he would take candidates out, have a beer with them to prove that he wanted to have a beer with them. And when it held up, he said he learned more about the people he was hiring because they weren't prepared for that. They expect you to ask questions. They expect certain questions to come out, and they're ready with their answers. It's like, I've got my resume all memorized, and I know you're going to ask me, give me 3 things you want to accomplish this year. Tell me what your 5-year plan is, and where do you see yourself in 10 years? And you got all those answers memorized, but then they say, hey, you want to go have a beer? I'm like, what? Huh? And then next thing you know, you let your guard down, and they find out a lot more about you. So
And that's what we really want. Cheers. Yes, that's what we really want as leaders. And you've already jumped into one of the best lessons that we can learn as leaders is to be ourselves, ask the right questions, bring in good talent, people that, you're comfortable with and that, can carry a conversation. Super important. And for that, I always will have a beer with Chad, because one of the things that I learned was it really helps us with creativity. And that's really what I wanted to, I was like, I can have a beer today. It's been a long day of recording, y'all. I've been all day, like back-to-back recordings. And I'm like, am I going to have any energy for the end of the day recording leadership talk? I was like, a beer will help with that.
Whoa. There's two things I heard in there. One, I think Charli just said, yeah, you do need beer to have a good time. Okay, that's true. Okay. And maybe I'm extrapolating a little bit, but the other thing I heard you say in there is you said, well, I'm a little low on energy, but a beer will help. Be careful. Red Bull got sued over that because somebody said, I drank a Red Bull and it did not give me wings. And no joke, that was a class action lawsuit that it was not considered frivolous, and they had to pay, I don't know how many millions of dollars.
Okay, well, we did not say that here.
Okay. Beer does not give you energy, according to Empowering Pups.
Yes. Okay, but it does. It makes me happy to share a beer with you, Chad. That's your MO, that's your brand, and that made me happy today. So thanks for being here.
Yeah.
And telling a little bit about your story. We do have a leadership summit coming up August the 31st. We want everybody to attend that. And I want to tell you a little bit about leadership. I really set out about 5 years ago to learn what leadership was all about. Somebody called me a leader and I was like, oh, I should probably learn what that is and how to become a better one. So Google is my friend. There's this, great author, John Maxwell, that writes a lot of leadership books. And so I went to his conference, I listened to so many materials and everything. And really just recently during a leadership, program with Rob Kalwarowski and Susan Hobson, I learned about this word emotional intelligence. And that's one of the first, sessions, I guess, of our leadership summit with MJ Jennings is going to be talking. And she's actually part of the elite high performance group that I was part of. But this really was impactful for me because maybe you were getting upset about somebody didn't do their work or just that initial response to a person, an activity or whatever. You kind of got upset and you don't really understand why you got so upset about it. This happens to me back then kind of frequently. And I monitored that and I saw like, okay, this is upsetting me regularly at the same time. What is that all about? So the emotional intelligence is not studying everybody else's emotions, right? It really is about your own emotions. And that really helps me because I could really pinpoint what I was telling myself, like what my subconscious was telling me. So that was really, once you pay attention, you start hearing those little things and you're like, what? I don't believe that at all. And here's the proof and evidence that that's not true. And that really did help. So I won't give away all of MJ's findings there on emotional intelligence, but I was curious, Chad, just have you heard of this? Have you experienced this at all?
This is fun because this will tell everybody in the audience, we definitely did not stage questions and prep. We just got on. I saw you had a beer. You knew I was going to open a beer and we were just going to go based on and we were going to talk about our experiences. I was going to ask you, I think I have an understanding of what emotional intelligence is. I'm not certain. I've never heard emotional intelligence before. In fact, if I'm being candid, one of the things that when I heard emotional intelligence, I thought, well, somebody with a psychology degree came up with that. I guarantee it. And then they worked in the human resources department and they put that on a business card or put it in a mission statement or something like that. And that's not to say it's bad at all. I'm not suggesting that. In fact, I actually like the saying emotional intelligence because when I heard it, this is what it made me think of. And you can say, Chad, that's really clever, but you're wrong. And just feel free to go ahead and tell me that. But when I heard that, it's really basically being able to, one, manage your own emotions so that you can maintain a certain level of professionalism, which is required as a leader. And I want to revisit that in a second. And the other is having the intelligence to recognize the emotions of others in the room. Now, you just said it's not looking at that, but that's how I interpret it. I saw it as being twofold.
It is, but you have to understand your own emotions and how you show up in order to see that in other people. And once you do understand that within yourself, you can notice it in others just like that.
Sure. And I get that. And that's one of the things I wanted to revisit here. I have seen people in leadership positions where they are the president, they're the manager or whatever, and they lose their mind over something, like just they crack. And it's over something that is manageable. It's something that we can recover from. And even if it wasn't, when you explode like that and you allow your emotions to dictate your actions and it comes out, it gets really hard to build credibility as a leader. I can't look at you as a leader and take you serious all of a sudden. So whenever, I mean, I don't care how much money you make. I don't care what kind of car you drive. I don't care how expensive your suit or your watch or your handbag are. I don't care. When I see you behave that way, I lose some respect for you as a leader. And I can tell you, I used to have a big temper, and I worked in companies and I had management positions and I had a temper. And somebody told me one time, they said, do you think that motivates people or scares people? And I said, well, I hope it motivates. He said, I didn't ask you what you hope for. Tell me what you think. I said, yeah, it probably does. And they said, now let me ask you another question. Do you see your bosses and the people you respect and look up to doing that to you? And I said, no, I don't. And guess what? That's one of those gulp moments when you go,
yes,
and you say, wow, did I? And then you go on the apology tour.
Yes. And I think it's so important. And, you know, it really is not about the situation a lot of the times, because you wouldn't respond. I use this example all the time because in my empowering women circles, we talk about a lot of being interrupted in a meeting. And then I said, well, if you're in a room full of girls and we're all talking over each other and we're not offended about that, we just keep on with the conversation. Right. So why is it so offending? And it's because you really have something to say, or you want, you know, you want to hear your voice, you know, let your voice be heard, or, you know, there's something in your past kind of making you so upset about this, or something that you're really, really passionate about and you're wanting to get that message out and you don't have an opportunity. So it's really not about that person over there that's interrupting you. It's that you don't have a place on the agenda to talk about it. And so there's so many things like that come up. And I think it's just important. And we talk about not being emotional. We're all emotional, and we have to be intelligent about it. We have to understand our emotions, right? Yeah. Okay.
Get those under control. And I guess an analogy or a metaphor or whatever you want to call it that I like to use is when you're in a position of leadership and it takes time to build yourself up to be equipped and be a capable leader. And then with that comes the reputation and the image. And it's a lot like a bridge. And I don't typically like to use metaphors and analogies like this, but it takes a long time to build a bridge. But once it's built, it's there, it's solid, it connects. It takes 1 second, though, to blow the whole bridge up and watch it go to the ground. And I mean, you can't instantaneously build a bridge, but you can instantaneously blow one up. And in a leadership role, when you're leading people and people are counting on you, looking up to you, you have to consider the time and effort it took to build that bridge. And now you want to maintain it. Don't blow it up by doing something silly.
Yeah. And actually, Sylvia, just on the podcast, I don't remember if she's before this one or after, but she says in her best advice is 24-hour rule. Don't, if it offends you, sit on it, figure it out. How you're going to deal with it. Don't respond in that moment. All of this sounds like leadership training, which goes to our next leadership summit session, and it's how training plays a critical role in maintaining and growing the workforce. Randy Stevens, he's with ABB, and he has just a wealth of knowledge to be around, excited about training people all the time. And I'm just curious, again, I'll probably say that word a lot because I really am curious, Chad, just on like training people, even like the podcast that you do on like the different beer and like, how do we even know what that is? Right. So how do you train yourself? How do you be seeing good training happening right now?
If I'm going to put myself into a classroom environment where I know I'm going to get training, and I'm going to sit there. Anything that comes at me and in the form of kind of static, sterile textbook material about whatever the topic is, it's hard to apply that, because immediately you're listening to it and you're like, yeah, but I don't know how to apply it, and I don't know how to apply it, and I don't know how to apply like what situation would I use that in? I can't see myself ever getting in that situation. So how? And it's not just leadership, it's anything. So what you want is, you want to know that whatever you're getting is applicable. And the best way I know to do that is to give case studies and to give real world experience. So, again, I'm sitting here and we're with you doing this podcast talking about leadership. And I told you, I used to have a temper, and I was asked a question, and it was, do you think this scares people or leads people to where they're going to be motivated? And I stepped on myself. I said, oh, well, I hope. And I was like, didn't ask you what you hope. This isn't a magic lamp. You don't just rub the lamp and poof, a genie shows up and says, well, you were hoping for this, and let's see. Well, yeah, you get your wish. No, that's not what happens. So for me, any type of training has to involve a real world example, and it has to be, it can't be that once in a lifetime thing. So for example, here's a good one. There are lots of leaders that were involved with the Apollo 13 mission. And we can sit here and talk about it till we're blue in the face, and we can talk about all the leaders and what they did and how great it was. And I'm going to ask you, if you work in the pump industry, how often are you going to find yourself in a situation where 3 people's lives are on the line, and you're partially responsible for getting them home with no solution, and you have to invent a solution, and oh, by the way, they're stuck in space? It's like, that is such an astronomical, pun intended, way of thinking, that you can't really make that relatable, but you can relate to scenarios in your industry, or even in ancillary industries, adjacent industries. You have to think about those situations. And I think as a teacher, as a trainer, whenever I go in, I like to use examples that people can relate to, even if they weren't there. Right. Oh yeah, I could see that happening to me. Oh, I could see something like that. Oh, you know what? I can relate to that. But when you use the analogy of, well, if you ever find yourself stuck on a mountain and, 14,000 feet up, and you have no food, no water, and there's a bear there, and the only thing you have is a spork from KFC, how are you going to get out of this? I'm like, I don't think I'm ever going to find myself in this situation, but right. I'm glad you survived and you made it back. And yes, that's a great motivational speech, but
I like this because it makes me think, like, you have to go out and do the work and be there and be present and understand where your customers are at, or your attendees, or whoever's in that training with you. One of the next things is a workforce panel, and some of these players here are doing that. They're going out, they're advocates for manufacturing and really being a resource. Denise is, she's definitely a resource in the workforce as a recruiter in the food industry. Megan Zaman, I'm confusing her with Crystal right now. Zimba, sorry, Megan. She's out with Megan's Mavens in manufacturing. She's doing a lot of great work in the schools and bringing kids in. Daryl Ann, she is in kind of the building side of things, construction, and making a way for people. And then Jack Hall, he is such a burst of energy. And when you see him at an event, you're like, whoa, okay, I need to know more about what he's doing. And so I say that because the training and really developing the next generation, the workforce, you got to get out, you got to talk to people, you got to be there and be relatable, which I think is what you were talking about. Okay, I'm switching gears a little bit. My friend Andy Martin, that I met at TPS, one of my first trade shows, the one that probably I met you at. Andy gave me a diamond back in the day when he worked for a company. It was not a real diamond.
I was going to say.
It was a swag. They did diamond technologies around drilling and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And sealing. And so this diamond was just like a plastic swag item that he gave me after I talked. And so he's such a leader in that regard of just like inspiring and like, saying good job, even though it's probably a terrible presentation, right? And he's just like, here, keep striving, keep trying to get better. But he talks about your LinkedIn strategy, and he's very active on social and marketing, but understands the industry. I'm curious about your thoughts on social media. Have you played any on LinkedIn? Thoughts?
Don't know if this is a popular saying that I'm going to say it anyway. You can always hang up on me if you don't like it, but I'm going to say this: whatever you do in social media, you can't be half pregnant. Mm-hmm. There's no such thing as being half pregnant. You are either in that space or you're not. Well, I dabble in it, then you're not in it. Mm-hmm. You're just not. I'm sorry. There is no half pregnant on this. LinkedIn is one of those where I have enjoyed connecting with my colleagues to find out what they're doing. But LinkedIn's one of these, if I'm looking for a job or looking for a speaking opportunity, I can typically find those there, and other people are doing the same thing. It seems like it's a huge recruiting playground for work opportunities. Mm-hmm. And I think that I don't think I'm saying anything very profound here, right? I mean, I think everybody knows that, but as a social media goes, I don't find LinkedIn to be very social. I find it to be, if you pay for the premium, I get emails and offers all the time. It's like, well, I saw your LinkedIn profile and thought you might be the right person to talk to. And so they sell.
I hate those. I hate when I get just spam from LinkedIn. I absolutely hate it.
But if one of your listeners, though, and one of your colleagues who I'm not friends with right now saw this podcast and said, I'd like to connect with Chad. Not sure what I would talk to him about. Don't think I'd ever hire him, but I'd like to connect with him. And they send me a message, say, hey, saw you on Charli's podcast, and I'd like to just connect. Be like, absolutely. Yeah, connect. Who knows? Down the road, we may end up working together and do something. I have no issue with that.
But what's your favorite of all the social media channels? Do you have a favorite?
It's gonna date me. Everybody's gonna call me a boomer. The one I play in the most, because it's so intuitive and it offers the most flexibility. And it's pretty easy. It's not just because I've been there the longest, is Facebook. Now, I know a lot of people are going to say, but Facebook doesn't get me the results because they changed the algorithms and you got to pay to play, and they keep blocking, some of this stuff, and they block some of the. Yes, but how's that any different than if I have 7,000 connections on LinkedIn and I see every single post? I can't sort it.
Yeah, I love that. I think there's value in every single social media platform. There's also, challenges and things that, we need to be concerned with. But I think that's really great. I like Facebook for my closest connections, that I can keep up with their lives. I can really understand what's going on with them personally. I think that's really important. And then I love LinkedIn for what's going on with business. What can I support you in there? Even to the point of like, business leadership books, for example, or podcasts, or people out in industry at events, and we can see it there. So there's kind of two worlds there, but they absolutely cross each other. So I'm interested to hear what Andy says about kind of launching a new strategy, kind of next level, and what all that is. Okay, and then next, this one's fun, Chad. We can really dive into this. Leadership starts with self-leadership. And Alexis is going to talk to us about that. But I think we can sit here for a minute on self-leadership. The hardest thing on the planet is to lead ourselves, and then we have to lead others too. So any practical ways or tips on how to lead yourself?
You're not going to like my answer, but I'm going to give it.
Mm-hmm.
I will tell you. So as an entrepreneur, the easiest way to be led is with money. If you have a client that puts a high value on your skills, that is motivation, and you push yourself. You are driven. But see, the thing is that's an outside agent that's actually driving you to get up and go and do that work.
Yeah, but let me just pick apart that just a minute. Yeah. What about, you're making the rate, you're putting the value on, you're saying, this is how much I'm worth. This is my value. You're going to buy from me at this. And if that's high, then yeah, you're like, this is a great relationship. I want to do a good job. I'm valuing myself. They're valuing me at that level. That's the win.
Yes, it is. And sometimes being, that self leadership is recognizing that you're worth that. I know there's so many people who talk about this, and it's so cliche. I'm sorry. I'm beating up my own answer. It's one of those things where I hate what I just said for so many reasons. Probably ought to have another sip of the beer here. All right, but it's so cliche to say that, you have to put a value on your time, and you got to put a value on that. That's all great, but the thing is, if somebody's not willing to pay it and you lower your rate, did you lower your value? And instinctively you want to say, well, of course you did, but no,
not all the time. No,
it's not. And I think part of being a self leader is recognizing that even whenever you have to compromise on whether it's a rate or compromise on how much time you can spend on a client because they're not paying you enough, or you make decisions that affect other people because you have to improve yourself constantly, whether it's I'm not going to go out for that drink, or I'm not going to go to that meeting, or I'm not going to go in on the holiday, or I'm not going to travel beyond this because I've made this. Being a leader is being able to say no to certain things so that you can focus on yourself. And that's what you said, self leadership is prioritizing yourself. And a lot of times people are so ambitious and so driven. I mean, I'll give you another example here. Go to any sitcom, go to any drama series, go to any movie, and show me the one where they work for an employer in a business environment, or they're hardworking on a ranch anywhere, or whatever they're doing. And the storyline is, yeah, I'm not going to give everything to my company and work really hard, but I'm just going to focus on self-leadership and work on myself. And tell me how that story sells. It doesn't. Nobody buys that story because they're like, well, that's somebody who's going to get fired pretty quickly. Like, no, they're not. But in the movies, that's how they portray it. So that's why everybody works hard and works 80-hour weeks and drives himself. And that's the image of it. And it's been sensational.
But think about this. Think about this. If you really do value yourself and you are taking that time, doing things strategically, resting when you need to, excelling, and I'll even say striving when you need to, or being really driven at times. If you can see that in yourself and know when you need a break, and you can let your team have that, right? That break, that see, okay, they really put in, last 3 days, they've been going, nonstop. We accomplished the goal. Have a little grace on them, right? Let them take a break after that, and really just kind of read the room, read your people, be close enough to them. They call it psychological safety, where your team is going to tell you. But I would go back to that emotional intelligence, and you should be able to see when your team needs that break. You need to be able to know that, right? Yeah,
absolutely. So here, I'll give you another example. Last time we did a podcast together, you asked me a question that you hit me with it, and I was like, oh crap. She's gonna, what's a book you're reading right now? And I'm like, no. And when you think about self-leadership, we should be always striving to improve. There's probably a book that I should be reading right now and doing that. But it dawned on me the other day. I was having a conversation with my wife, and she says, what are you doing? And I said, oh, I'm helping somebody with something. She says, is it a client? I said, no. She says, well, who is it? I told her it's a friend who owns a business, and they asked me to proofread something, or they want to do. And I realized that part of my DNA, what I like to do, is I like to help people. So totally hypothetically, if somebody said, hey, Chad, you want to do a podcast with me? I'd be like, yeah, let's do it. I like to help. And so I found that for me, part of if I were going to, again, self-leadership, if I'm going to apply that to myself, one of the things that I like to do is I like to help someone every day. I look for an opportunity to try and help somebody every day, whether it's seeing their life experiences on Facebook and being able to offer them a word of encouragement, or offer to help them with something. Or in fact, today, another example, somebody sent me a article that they wrote. It was an industry article for the brewing industry. And he said, tell me what you think. I think it's going to piss off a lot of people. Can you give me some feedback? And I read his article, and I went through and I gave him some feedback. And I don't get paid for that, but I'm not looking for that. But I like to first of all, it challenges my skills and I get to develop something. And then second, I'm helping a friend.
Mhm.
I'm helping
It,
somebody. And that's what I like to do.
absolutely. And that people notice that people will come back to you for other work just because that you've done that for them. I think that is that gratitude, but also that kindness, right? Like to be thankful for the work that we have, the things that we can do. I love a podcast. I love running into somebody. Like people can pay me to, have a sponsored podcast or,
Sure.
Something like that. But I genuinely like meet somebody. I'm like, I got to share you with the world because you're
Yeah.
awesome. Let's do that. So the next kind of closing in our summit is let's get real about leadership. Tracy Quinnell is going to be talking about that. So let's get real about leadership. Okay. On my side, what I've learned is it's hard and it's a commitment and it's fun and it's rewarding and it's, all the things all at once. And it's a job. You have to work at it. You have to be, willing and committed to becoming a better leader. Otherwise, you're not going to have that followership, right? And I do think about leadership as somebody who, somebody gave that title to you, which is what happened, right? With me, I was like, they just called me a leader. I don't really know if I want that. Let me dig into that. But then the other side is just before somebody's kind of in their leadership zone, recognizing that they have some skills and directing them and giving them resources. So I'll ask you this, Chad, what does leadership mean to you?
Multiple answers, but they're all tied together. It's kind of like saying, which leg of the stool is the most important. Well, you need three legs on that stool. I'm sorry, so they're all important. A lot of people say, well, leadership is doing the same job that you would expect others to do, that you're asking others to do. So if I'm asking you to do something as a leader in this organization or leader at this event, it has to be something that I would be willing to do myself. Don't put any tasks that's quote unquote beneath you and hand it off to somebody who's basically looking up to you, and just because it'll lower their value. Does that mean that you don't delegate? No, that's not what I'm saying. Absolutely not. The other thing is I think being a leader, part of your job is making sure that those who are following don't feel like followers. Don't let them feel that way. Let them feel like they have a vested interest and they're contributing to part of it. So they may look up to you and say, yeah, he's our leader and he's doing that. But if you make them feel like a follower, then they're less inclined to follow you as a leader. Even though that's what they're doing, you don't make them feel less.
Because we're really all learning this together, right? Like we're becoming better leaders because they're allowing us to lead, right? And they're giving real feedback. I mean, how can we lead without real feedback? I just don't know how. I would be tripping up every corner without somebody. Even their body language can give you just exactly what you need to be like, oh, okay, I see that I need to shift a little bit, or I need to reach out to them. I haven't heard from them in a long time, right? They've been silent and just reading that, right? Okay, Chad. Well, I'm going to give it to you. I was like, is there one last kind of leadership tip, things that you want people to know?
Well, you talked about this first topic, the emotional intelligence. And there was one other point that ties into being this leadership, this three-legged stool that we were talking about. I think that again, I mentioned early on, if people see you explode and not be able to manage your own emotions, but the other is, I love this word in business, and I tell people all the time, and if you want to bring this in, we even tie this into social media. There's one word that's lacking from a lot of leaders. So definitely lacking from social media. It's lacking from a lot of business environments, and the word is grace. We don't give people enough grace. And if you have the power and authority as a leader to be punitive, to penalize people, to limit their careers, to fire, to withhold certain rewards, and you do that, you build a reputation. But if you can show grace, because that's what we all want. I want to work for somebody. If I messed up at your event, if I was there at Epic and I said something just flew out of my mouth and went, oh my goodness, ladies and gentlemen, I have no idea where that came from. I have no idea. Yeah, that could be damaging. It could be embarrassing, but at the same time, you look at me and you say, Chad, are you trying to sabotage my event? I hate you right now. And by the way, I'm going to ruin your career and I'll make sure everybody knows how bad you suck. No, don't, please give me a little grace. I wouldn't do that. And at the same time, we need to put that lens on whenever somebody else says it. And it's like somebody says something or does something that we would consider inappropriate, or something that is, it takes us backward against our goal. We're moving forward and this person gets upset and does, next thing you know, we've moved back. Hold up. Let's find out what it is. Let's talk to them again, reading the room and finding out, okay, wait a minute, before I go ahead and start handing out your suspension, your firing, your demotion, whatever it is, can I just understand why you did what you did? Because there may be a very good reason. And I'm not saying that we forgive every sin, but what we do is we offer grace when grace needs to be offered. And
and a lot of the times it's I've had this experience. So I'm thinking about that. I caused that employee to stumble, right? I didn't give them the information that was needed or the expectation so that they can meet it. I never communicated that fully, right? So there's a lot on that, and you definitely can't come to the end of it without communication. So I think that was right on. Chad, you're so much fun to talk to.
Yeah, it's fun. I love this. Yeah, and you talk about when we talk about improving leadership. You mentioned early on, you said it's so subjective sometimes, but it's the same thing with communication. You go to any business meeting and planning meeting, they say, okay, what do we want to do this year? Well, we want to improve communication. It's a very broad brush stroke right there, and nobody got specific with it, but we could always improve communication. We can always improve on leadership. So doing things like the virtual event on the 31st of August, doing things with the Imagining Innovation in November in Atlanta, where I'm going to be. I can't wait to hang out with you there. That's going to be fun. And bringing people on and keeping your podcast going, which you've done such a great job doing, connecting people. Yes, that makes you a leader. You put these events on, you connect these people, and you trust them to go and put this content out there, and you frame it. You frame it so well.
And I definitely, so when I told somebody this today, actually, when I am imagining innovation, it is about communication. It is about people. When I go in November and I see all those round tables, it's about people talking to people. They're going to be innovating because they are going to get in that room with all the energy and inspiration and remember why they're in the industry and how exciting that is. So and with my leadership, my culture, my values, my passion for this pump industry, bringing everybody together in Beaufort, Georgia, just outside of Atlanta. Fly into Atlanta, everyone, and then you'll just drive a short bit to Beaufort.
Wait, you mean the Beaufort International Airport?
It doesn't exist, yeah. Oh, okay. But there's going to be so much fun, and definitely we're going to have some beer and a Beard Logic presentation for everybody in their networking, and how that works is you come, you have a beer, we learn some lessons from Chad, and then we talk about it. It's a lot of fun. So looking forward to seeing you again, Chad. And, for everybody else, that I'm excited that they get to meet you as well.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on again. You call, you pick up the phone, you call, say, hey, we got a podcast and we're going to chat. Hey, I know one thing's going to happen. We're both going to have a beer and we're going to have a good time. Now, whether or not we can put together and articulate a couple of sentences that are engaging and move people forward, I think we did all right here today.
I know. Yeah. While y'all are listening, let us know, right? Let us know how we did, things that you agree with, things that you don't. I love feedback like that. I'm a constant or continuous improvement, depending on which part of the predictive maintenance side of things you're involved in. I love continuous improvement. So send me that stuff. Like, share, subscribe. Please share this podcast. Chad is doing a great job. And if you like beer, tune in to What's on Tap Radio. That's What's on Tap Radio with a very cool marketing swag right there. Yep, that's it. What's on Tap Radio. Chad.
I had to explain to somebody the other day what swag was. They're like, What does actually swag mean? It's stuff we all get. There you go. That's what it stands for, acronym. There you go.
I love
Great
it.
seeing you.
Yes, wonderful. Okay, until next time, everybody, be empowering.